In the studio now is Erica Groh, meteorologist at WUSA TV in Washington, D.C. Erica, thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And I
Thanks.
thought to myself, how ironic that you're in to talk about all this bad winter weather we're supposed to have on a day where we had 70-degree temperatures in December, no less.
Absolutely.
What gives?
Well, I actually wasn't surprised to see temperatures getting warmer as we headed into December. It was a very chilly November. Long-term patterns generally run on a 4 to 6 week schedule. So I actually anticipate that most of December is going to be mild. January is the coldest month of the winter, I think. And that's the most likely month where we will see snow.
Now, AccuWeather is predicting above normal snowfall and below average temperatures here in the Northeast region and Baltimore, D.C.
Right.
What exactly, where do they get those predictions from, and how do you see it?
Okay, well, in this case, I think that the reason that they're going with those predictions is because the long-term pattern that you've probably heard of called the El Nino Southern Oscillation is not a factor right now. So we are in what's called an ENSO neutral phase. No big anomalies in either direction. All right, so when you have a neutral phase, the other elements like the cold polar air mass that is right now in northern Canada can go ahead and make a dip to the south. I personally don't think that's going to be a huge factor this season. Like I said, a really intense cold period in January, but besides that, not too bad.
I know as part of the Capital Weather Gang, that you, of course, predicted that Reagan National Airport would have 14 to 18 inches of snow. Is that normal or is that above normal?
That is right around normal. Reagan National typically gets 15.4 inches of snow annually. So I'm pretty much staying in what would be a normal winter. Really, I think we'll get 1, maybe 2 big snowstorms in January, and by big, I mean 6 inches or more. Not a huge deal. I mean, hey, I'm
no
just coming here.
No snowmageddon.
No snowmageddon, no 2-foot snowstorms, I don't think. But of course, when you get one of those coastal storms, you know, that's it.
Yeah, all bets are off.
That's it, all bets are off then.
All right, Erica, we've got a question from Joe in Federal Hill. Joe, fire away.
Here, I look at a 10-day forecast and see that it's, you know, that it often changes 2 or 3 days into that 10-day forecast. So I guess the question is, what makes forecasting weather in the Baltimore area or this part of the East Coast so complex?
Yeah, great question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question,
yes.
Joe. What do you say, Erica?
Well, it's not just here in the Baltimore, D.C. area that the weather forecast can be so complicated. Everywhere I've worked, it's been challenging, whether it's West Texas or Connecticut or right in this area. But one thing that makes the long-term forecast so challenging is that there's all these features that aren't being taken into account in those forecast models. So what you're doing is you're getting data from all around the world, temperature, pressure, wind speed and direction, humidity. But in between those grid points where you're getting data, you can have an entire mountain, an entire city, a lake, a river, things that can really alter the whole weather pattern. So when we miss those little minutiae, it can affect the entire pattern, and that's why your forecast will, what I like to call, evolve over the forecast period. Yes.
I always say meteorologists have the best job ever. They can say the weather is going to be one thing, and if it turns out to be something else, it's like, oh, you know, hey, so many other factors that came in.
And that's very true, but all forecasters have that in their job description, right? Economic forecasters, sports commentators, you know, we all make predictions, and whether we get them spot on or we're a little bit off, you know, usually it's still okay for the job, just as long as we have a good reason why our forecast wasn't exactly right. And I think that that's what's really important, is I take my job as a forecaster very seriously, and I want to bring in as much weather information as I can. And what I'm giving you is my best guess for what's going to happen.
And that's all one can ask for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Let's talk a little bit about, we hear oftentimes about, you know, global warming and climate change and how that might affect superstorms like Sandy.
Yeah.
What effect does that really have on some odd weather behavior patterns that we sometimes might experience? Does it?
I really don't know. I don't think we can honestly say that an event like Superstorm Sandy is because of climate change. Because we're looking at...
Mayor Bloomberg did. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
But we are looking at such a short time scale, right? Accurate weather records have only been kept for about 150 years here in the United States. Beyond that, it gets very, very dicey. And boy, we had some really, really bizarre things happen even since the colonial era. And, you know, on the geographic timescale, that is just a blink of an eye compared to how long weather has been happening on Earth, right? So is this unprecedented? It's really hard to say, but we did have one of my favorite events of all time that we know about is the year 1816, the year without a summer, where the entire Chesapeake Bay froze over. So if we think we have weird weather now,
You ain't seen nothing
you
yet.
Ain't seen nothing
Let me see
yet.
if I can
That's
squeeze
right.
in a quick question from Sarah from Towson. Sarah, go ahead.
Just curious how the weather's going to be this winter. I heard it's going to be a rough year, and I'm hoping it won't be.
Well, Sarah obviously asked our question from earlier, but obviously, when's the time that you think it's going to be the most bad? I mean, February, March, when are we looking? Because I think they said February 12th to the 15th and 20th to the 23rd of March, major coastal storms along the Atlantic seaboard.
Wow, that is way out in the future.
Too far
All the
ahead for you to-
mountains and lakes and rivers that aren't getting accounted for in the model data. I really think that January is the best time frame for a big storm. And that's because, I mean, you've noticed we just had a little bit of shower activity yesterday. There's more showers in the forecast later on this week. The long-term models are bringing a wetter pattern to us. So as we start to get more moisture in our weather pattern and the colder air starts to come down, I think that coincidence will happen in January.
We'll see. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can squeeze beyond that. Anybody's
Right.
Let's see if we can squeeze in a question from Russell in Dundalk. Russell?
I'm hoping the weather will get better. We've had some pretty bad storms, and you know, we've seen weather in the last couple of years we've never seen before. The first time in Maryland, we've had an earthquake that shook quite a lot of states, and you know, I find it very unusual. And you know, a lot of people have suffered across the nation with some very unusual weather, and I'm wondering if it doesn't have something to do with the greenhouse effect.
All right, Erica, 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, with the greenhouse effect, you have more moisture in the air, so more storms. In general, that's what happens. Earthquakes, just as a quick FYI, are not weather. That's something that's happening under the ground. That's geology.
So there's a little bit of information for us this evening. We appreciate that.
Sure.
Erica Groh, meteorologist, of course, at Channel 9 WUSA. We really appreciate you coming in to speak with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you.